Alain, est-ce que tu veux te joindre à nous? Would you want to take the floor, please? Over to you.
Thank you, Sylvie, and hello, everybody. So, dear colleagues, we will take some time and we would like to take the opportunity offered through this webinar to quickly share with you the CAR experience on the Caisses-de-Resilience. Indeed, this approach, absolutely unique and innovative, emerged as a real opportunity to support the ongoing process in the country that lead to seek the implementation of a specific community-based resilience policy for affected population, as well to support resilience-oriented activities conducted through the communities within the population hardly hit by the recent crisis in the country. Also, the approach appealed to FAO and many of its partners, including the civil affairs component of the MINUSCA and the EU-funded DEVCO, as a key vector of support and guidance to community recovery and consolidation of peace, two main national priorities defined by the newly elected President of the Republic and its government. My colleague Paulin will present some key figures of the achievement of the Caisses-de-Resilience in Central African Republic. Then we will have few words about the envisaged scaling up. Paulin?
A quick tour of Caisses-de-Resilience situation in Central Africa. We began in September 2014. Firstly, we began with training partners on FFS and the ESLA. More than 250 technical staff in 85 partner organizations and the 20 technical staff of the decentralization department of Ministry of Agriculture was trained. We have implemented the FEDER in 10 of 16 prefectures of Central Africa with 23 partners local and 5 international partners, and we implicate a 5 decentralization structure of Ministry of Agriculture. We have touched 216 target groups, 204 funds and 6 achieved so, 202 and 16. Many of these groups are beneficiaries are women. The main category of activities is small trade, agriculture processing, small livestock, seed multiplication, gardens, chemo, awareness to social cohesion and the peaceful coexistence, HPD and SGBD. The setting mobilized up to date is $15 per member. The loan is
so there is $430,000 mobilized for the 2,268 groups we are targeting. The loans granted to date are on an average of $30 per beneficiary, and 70% of the direct beneficiaries have had access to credit. 75% of the beneficiaries of those credits are vulnerable women.
Some aspects observed after the phase 1, a stronger ability to generate sales and access to farmer service opportunities, and sufficient community to FFS approach involved technical skill in agriculture production and income within the household. The deployment was said in the 10th prefecture, implicit messages perceived by community as peace return in Central Africa after the quiz and the recent election. Involved confidence in self, function with the group, and better capability to work in synergy with other groups. Access to credit, promotion of around 20 generating income activity, support and increase household income from the activity, diversification of economic activity, capacity to support children nutrition, children's school, capacity to support expenses related to householder, support medical expenses for the family, involving women capacity to be heard by the husband and also to speak in public, meeting and assembly. Outline from the SEDER evaluation of SEDER in South Africa. The SEDER offers 3 types of support to the same time in favor of one group corresponding to the needs expressed by the community. The SEDER is a community gateway in the living conditions of this member and the community in wider scope, social cohesion, SGBV, child protection, human rights, maternal health, and HIV. Which cost the beneficiary of $19 input, staff, logistical, etc. Actually, the proper investment of SEDER accumulates up to $6 million since the launch of the SEDER approach. Retooling agro-pastoral, through and consolidation of pesticide. The SEDER strengths relations sky, economic, final, and technical member of target group. The viability of the SEDER, that is to say the fact of status after the training phase, is high. Consolidation of the entrepreneurial pride, responsibility, and solidarity, which is the main level in the fight against food insecurity and nutrition. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, but I think we're running short of time, and the sound is not very good. And I think we are considering having another session on Caisses-de-Resilience for Francophone countries, and where we could highlight the case of the Central African Republic. So, if you please excuse me, I think we'll need to stop your intervention now. And thank you for this. We know you have a huge experience ongoing there in Central African Republic in a post-conflict, very complex situation. And I would like to now take up a few questions to present to our speakers. We have a few shorter ones, and I will start with these shorter ones, but I'd like to thank you everybody for your high level of interest. We have many very good and fascinating questions. We will try to also provide some answers in writing to these questions as part of the feedback of this webinar. We'll take the first question of Pier Paolo Piras, working at DEVCO, and close colleague of us. He's asking the question of labeling the Caisses-de-Resilience, like a process which is ongoing in Central African Republic. And if we could explain, and this is a question for you, Alexis, why simple guidelines may be not enough, and why would there be an idea or a need for standardization, certification of this Caisses-de-Resilience approach? Alexis, if you can succinctly answer, please, knowing that there will be additional written material provided. Thank you.
Okay, so now, if I understood well the question, the idea was to make sure that we all go in more or less the same direction, but still keeping some flexibility for the countries to adapt the Caisses-de-Resilience approach. But still, we have to respect some principles. It's like what we did with the Farmer Free School in East Africa. There is some guidelines that there are some principles we cannot go away. And I think it's a nice initiative that has been developed in CAR to, at the same time, to develop a quality assurance process, but also a guidance to make sure that the organizations or the government who would like to get involved in the implementation of the Caisses-de-Resilience, they know what are the key principles. And but again, the key principle is to make sure that the people have these 3 pillars as a service, and then within these 3 pillars, it's quite flexible, but make something realistic and useful for the people. Don't go in big theory or making plan on the comet. But I think we needed a minimum standards to agree on to make sure that we have the same we are working under the same framework. Was that the question?
I think this is good, Alexis. Indeed, I think the challenge is retaining the adaptability and the tailoring it to the context specific, but that the three dimensions of these Caisses-de-Resilience are applied, and that they're applied consistently and combined together. So not that this sort of Caisses-de-Resilience approach is a mixing or omitting some of these key elements, and it needs to be a bit written up, but not to be, as you said, not to be a straitjacket. Also, I'd like to, in view of the number of questions, I would like to quickly answer myself to two suggestions, that one from Indira and another one, I think, from Alain also on RCA, is that the Caisses-de-Resilience are using there some existing interventions and opportunity, which are the Club Dimitra, which are really helping on the social element of the Caisses-de-Resilience. And then the good suggestion from Indira, which is linked to the natural resource management, especially on the safe access to fuel wood and energy, that these Caisses-de-Resilience could very well be combined for addressing the question of good natural resource management and the question of fuel wood and the best practices on that. And this is indeed something that should be promoted for in the Horn of Africa or in Somalia, where Indira has been witnessing the situation. So that's taking care of two additional suggestions or questions from our participants. Another one from Federico Spano is on the question of the sustainability, the viability of the Caisses-de-Resilience. And there, perhaps I would like, because this is such a fundamental point, I would like maybe Alberto to answer first on the question of viability, because you've also have some elements that you indicated in this evaluation of the work in Central America. And also Alexis to answer to the second part of the question, which is the notion of conditionality. And how we are moving away today more and more away from conditionality of cash transfer and doing more accompanying measures. And so that component of the question is asking whether this is the option or is this being tested somewhere. So I realize these are long points, but maybe first point, Alberto, on the question of viability, sustainability of the Caisses-de-Resilience approach, especially from the financial element. Over to you, Alberto.
Yes, thank you, Sylvie. I think, I totally agree. The sustainability of the fund is the key aspect, and that's what we are evaluating right now. Actually, until now, I think we have not enough results. We didn't have enough time to evaluate the results in terms of in sustainability. That's why that's because we got the first pilot process in Central America in 2014, and in 2015 the evaluation. But I think it would be important to have a further evaluation in 2017 and the other years to understand better the what are the key points to provide sustainability. In our case in Central America, in order to be sure that the sustainability is ensured, the measures that have been taken, it was first of all to work with the existing association that were already in place, some kind of saving and loan mechanism. So in this way, I answer as well to the other question of Jacques Conforti and other people that were asking about the difference within saving and loaning and community contingency fund. Actually, every association has two funds, at least the one in Central America. One for loaning, which is independent, and then it was already managed before the project. And with the project, we include this other aspect, or this other approach of the community contingency fund, which is just for emergency, and respect the issue of the conditionality. And so the important part is that these two funds are separate, because they have to be because the community contingency funds have to be used just for emergency. So that's the other question. In this way, I answered the other question. But I think the key point for the sustainability of the community contingency fund, at least for the Central American context, is the as long as is the support, the technical support to the community, as much as we are sure that this approach is going to be sustainable, because of course it needs to be understood by the community. It needs to be followed up in order to be sure that all the mechanisms are working, because it's not, at least in the way as it has been implemented in Central America, it's not so simple, because there are a lot of elements: early warning system, the DRM plan, all the rules and regulation of the funds. So the approach we use in Central America needs longer-term program. That's why the idea was to link emergency project with development project. In somehow the thing I was saying, Alexis, about the duration of the program, which should be at least 2 years, it's true, but I think if we want to be sure that the sustainability is ensured, it should be even longer. So I don't know if I answered the question. I leave the floor to Alexis, that probably can complement.
Yes, Alberto, thank you. I think you answered very nicely. Indeed, we need more time. The longer the approach, combined with the emergency rehabilitation development funding, the better it is. Alexis, if you want to complement on this question of viability and also on the specific aspects of the conditional cash transfer versus the cash transfer, which is accompanying measures, that would be very nice. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. So for the sustainability, of course, it looks like from the different evaluation, the key for the sustainability is the financial aspect, because that's what almost everywhere in the world we are looking at, is to make sure we can get some access to the fund. And then, of course, we don't have to dream too much. It's for sure that's a living approach, and these groups are also living and disappearing or reorganizing themselves. We have seen in many groups that with the years they expel some of the members. The members who are not serious or they don't reimburse on time for bad reason, they have been expelled. And like this, sometimes a group of 30 people, they become like just 20, and this 20 is more homogeneous and more serious. So that's for the financial aspect. The technical aspect, it's either the group has decided to put this condition to apply the good practices to get access to the financial pillar, and then you have a room for sustainability, or they don't go for this condition, and then they can implement or continue to implement these good practices at the individual level. That's their decision. Now, because we are working in developing countries, very often all these groups, they become like attractive for the other service providers, and also they know how to make their voice heard, and they go for looking for new services to complement their capacities. So that's a bit the way it's sustainable. But if you go to the vsla.net website, they say clearly that 90 or 95% of the groups, the VSLA groups, are still functioning after 5 years. So that's not from FAO, it's the VSLA association who is saying that. And if it's true, it's a nice achievement. When you look at the Tontine in West Africa, they've been there for decades, and the VSLA is more or less the same principle. So I don't see why the majority would disappear, but I cannot confirm completely. So that was for the sustainability. Now for the conditional or unconditional cash transfer, that's a long discussion, and everybody is right and everybody is wrong. It depends on the situation. The conditionality to get the money, it depends. First, it depends on the situation. If you have been affected by a tsunami or by 10 months of displacement, it can be unconditional. Or for example, even the VSLA groups, the ladies, the Women Association in Liberia, they depleted their fund because of the quarantine due to the Ebola. We could have given the funds like this. I had no problem. But discussing with them, they also wanted to be part of the Ebola awareness campaign. So, and that's the reason why we signed a contract with them to play that role, to pursue, to continue the Ebola awareness campaign, and for them to have a social role within their communities. But the cost, for example, was like $750 for them, and we paid $1,250. So it was conditional, unconditional at the same time, because we increased the amount for them. And so again, it really depends. For example, when you have a conditional upfront condition, the people have to work to get the money, or they don't have to work, depending on the situation. But when they have to work, we also put, or we don't put, but we suggest a condition on how they are going to use that money. And in Uganda, more or less each group were getting like $5,000, and we suggested them to use part of that money for whatever they want, so to build their house, to pay for education, to pay for medicine, to health and whatever. And the other part, we suggested to them to use that money to buy the shares. So again, we don't impose, we propose. And then the people decide to do what they want to do. Is it understandable, the reply for that question?
Yes, thank you, Alexi. Again, I think what you're flagging is the importance to be responding to the needs voiced by the people affected or threatened. So it's a participatory process, really anchored in the local condition. And again, you're recommending for some flexibility, and that both ways are feasible, conditional or not conditional. So context specific. So no, that's a very, very good exhaustive answer. Thank you. We still have many questions. We are going to continue a little bit, but we will not be able to respond to all of your good points. We will follow with some written responses to some of the longer questions raised. For example, one was raised by Natalia on the links between the Caisses-de-Resilience and the social protection and how to better articulate that. That indeed was not very well addressed in the presentation. Maybe that was our purpose, but it would be good to address this, and that should be answered in writing, I think, by our expert here. Similarly, we have a question by our colleague Damien Vaquier from WFP, asking more questions on the processes to engage communities, understanding local livelihoods, the links to the various shocks, and the combination of activities and the sequences. I think some of the points were well covered in the presentation, but again, a written response would probably be better than a verbal one now because of time. There is a question that was posed by Massimo Pera on the cost. What is a little more clarification, I think, on the cost. That's an interesting point. How much is the cost for a Caisses-de-Resilience by community member in terms of saving? Here, I think, Alexi, you did mention $3,000, $4,000 US. Is that by family? Is that? Can you just give a little precision on that one before we go to the next question, and how this savings can help to? I think you did answer that. Gradually become member of financial institutions. The link between those two. Alexi, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, but very quickly for the colleagues on the WFP. In fact, in the farmer fiscal approach, we use something very close to the PRA, participatory appraisal, where you can have the identification of the technical needs and the social needs. And then you have the AESA, Agroecological System Assessment, which is also used for the farmer fiscal. And for example, in Karamoja, the agro-pastoralist area, we did a collaboration with IIRR, International Institute for Rural Reconstruction, and they have a methodology called the Community Managed Disaster Risk Reduction. And there's also a part of this approach which is on the assessment. And but something interesting with WFP, I think they have a season-long system to see what the people can do throughout the season and to better anticipate the risk and opportunities. So I think we will try to get close to WFP to see how we can take advantage of also their methodology. On the cost, in fact, the $3,000 to $10,000 we mentioned, it's not to go in the case. It's the cost of the whole project. The case is fed by two sources. One is the own contribution of the population, but again, because most of them are very poor, and if they just put their own contribution, they will not go very far and very fast. So that's the reason why there is another source of fund that could be either the cash transfer, conditional or not, or sometimes we provide agro-processing machine, as I mentioned, or we encourage them to do a cassava crop, whatever, and we suggest that part of the benefits from this first harvest goes to the members for buying shares. So again, it's not the $3,000 or $4,000 going into the VSLA approach. This money is for the VSLA training, for some of the cash transfer, but it's also training on agriculture, having contract with other partners for the social aspect, etc., etc. Is it okay, or I forgot something?
No, Alexi, thank you. This is very good, very comprehensive. I would like now to pose a quick question to Alberto from Jacques Conforti, who is wanting to better understand the link between obtaining a loan, how you can get a loan outside of an emergency declaration, or is accessing the loan is only because an official emergency declaration. Alberto, could you quickly clarify this, please?
Sure. Actually, I think I already answered to this question, but I repeat again, it's the association we have been working with. They have two systems and two funds, one for saving and loaning, and the other one for community contingency funds. Some of them, they even moved some money from the saving and loan fund to the community contingency fund to provide a better volume of resources for emergency. But by the way, the two mechanisms are separated. So every association has even their own mechanism of saving and loaning, which every association has their own rule and regulation and different interest rates. And they have the community contingency fund that, yes, it has been, I mean, the rule is to use it just in case of emergency, and there is even a protocol to define when it's emergency and when this community contingency fund can be activated. So that's, I think, the answer.
Yes, Alberto, indeed, you have presented some of these elements, but I think the way you've just explained it again, now it's very clear that you can have both, right? The contingency funds is linked to an emergency declaration, accessing to those loans, and the other savings and loans in case of other development or other needs. And so that is a good clarification. Thank you for that. Now, Reda from the Sahel is asking us on the process of selection of group for the Caisses-de-Resilience, and how do you apply the selection, the sort of criteria, the way to achieve this for the desired results. So especially with is asking for the various groups or associations which are already existing. So in the case when you don't need to create these groups, Alexi, do you want to take this answer, please?
Okay, so in fact, most of the time we try not to create new groups, because otherwise there's a risk that they are just establishing themselves just for the short-term benefit of the project. So for example, in Chad we have two projects for the women in the Sahel area and in the returning area close to Central Africa Republic. And we are working with the women association that have been supported by FAO, Action contre la faim, Save the Children, and Oxfam, I think, and COPI. So we know that these groups have been supported for let's say the one supported by FAO previously. They were assisted with the agriculture part and nutrition by ACF. So now we come with the saving and loans approach. So we try to, first, when we initiate the Caisses-de-Resilience in a country, we try to complement the work that has been done either by FAO or by another institution. So that's one option. The other option is like in Guinea Bissau. where we have decided we work mainly, or let's say almost exclusively, with women associations. I know it will depend on the budget that we have. For example, if I remember well, the EU, they want to work in the southeast provinces. So then there maybe you have 100 or 200 groups, and they will provide the fund for all the groups. And if they don't provide for all, you go in one village, you don't go to another one. That's life. One day you are lucky, one day you are not lucky. And but then the selection of the members of the groups, that's the responsibility of the groups, because there is some money in the game. They have to make sure they trust each other. Otherwise, there will be some problem in the management of the groups. And but I know that question. There is a hidden question, I guess, behind. It's how do we target the poorest of the poor who are not part of the groups? And that's the example I gave from Honduras, where we have seen some groups that oblige themselves to integrate or to include some of the poorest within the community. And very often it's a woman that has been abandoned by the husband, or a husband who is not really responsible. And I can give another example in Liberia, where there was a big project between the EU and UNICEF giving unconditional cash transfer to poorest of the poor. And after 3 years or 4 years of the project, these poor people, they were maintained in poverty, and they make sure that they don't go into extreme poverty. But at the end of the project, because that money was not invested, they went back to extreme poverty. So the idea now is to have a project where we make a link between these people. So we give them unconditional cash transfer, but we put them in contact with some of the women associations doing the VSLA, and at the same time we give some money to the women association to facilitate the integration of these extremely poor person who receive the unconditional cash transfer. Because the unconditional cash transfer for the poor, it's okay, I have no problem with that, but at the end of the project, if the budget line is finished, they go back to the previous status, which is not good. So we have to really make a link with a structure that can raise their level of life, or standard of life. So that's another way to integrate the people, the poorest of the poor.
Thank you, Alexis. Perhaps here I'm taking out my hat of facilitated, but I think what Alberto is, or maybe Alberto, you want to complement here on that point, is the linking to the poverty is certainly a definitely very important criteria, but the sort of risk profile, the sort of frequency, repetition of the way people are hit by shocks, various shocks that interfere with one another, I mean, aggravate between one another, that should also definitely come into the selection criteria. Alberto, do you want to confirm? Over to you.
Yes, actually, I'm going to repeat more or less what Alexis was saying. I mean, here there are 2 criteria to take into account. The first one is the vulnerabilities. So, as you were mentioning, of course, we try to support vulnerable groups, but at the same time, we need to have groups that are already organized, because to organize a group from zero, we have many risks. And the first one is what Alexis was mentioning, the risk of the fact that the organization, the group is created just to get benefit from the project and then disappear. So if you want to have sustainability, the best is to build on already existing association. And in case of Central America, we even work with the association. They had already a system of loaning, saving and loaning inside the association. That's facilitate. Of course, the other risk is that then we are not covering the most vulnerable. But somehow, I mean, in the selection of the groups, there are both criteria. So we try to find a balance within the two aspects.
Thank you very much for this point. Deborah from Nairobi and the Farmer Field School is adding an element of correction a bit to what you said, Alexis, that the Farmer Field School always has in itself a strong social element built in. And this is also to complement a point mentioned by Indira. So that these technical aspects from the pharmacy school is also covering some social element. So I think that's the point that Deborah wanted to make. The full point is there, available on the screen. And that's the advantage of having the Farmer Field School that covers some of these technical and social elements, complemented in the Caisses-de-Resilience approach with the financial element, obviously. So I would like to deal now with the 2 points. One final point by Natalia on social protection. We will provide a written answer to these because this is quite a intense justification to provide on the link in the articulation of the Caisse de Résilience and the social protection. The other point, which is a nice point for concluding our question and answers and webinar on Caisse de Résilience, is one raised by Speciose, which is asking what are the major challenges that you have met on the Caisse de Résilience implementation. So to conclude, Alexis, if you could list 3 or 4 main challenges, and then we'll also give to Alberto the floor from his regional perspective on those other main challenges, 3 or 4, and with that I think I'll just have the concluding remark and we will close this session. Alexis, over to you.
Okay, for me the main challenge is, and I'm again not preaching from my church, we are too much agronomists in this area of work, and we really have to make sure that all the colleagues are a bit more open mind and going more for social and financial aspects. Sometimes it's very difficult to convince people that we have to go out of the silo. So that's something it's very difficult, and it's because when I go to countries, I'm acting as a representative, then I have the capacity to influence. But if you don't have that capacity, it's very, very difficult and challenging to explain to someone with a Farmer Field School expert or beans expert or a banana expert to go to finance. It's very difficult. And so the second thing which is a bit difficult, it's for the facilitators. It could be from the Dimitra Club or for the Farmer Field School. All these approaches are very nice and well written, but then in the middle of the bush you have to work the good person to implement the methodology, and that's not easy. The other thing is to convince the donors. It's not so difficult, but still there's some specific budget line which does not allow to have such a comprehensive approach. Another challenge is the unity within the groups. As soon as there is money in the game, you can have some tensions, but it depends how the facilitator is handling the group. And then also very often in Uganda, for example, we had the challenge that during let's say the emergency, post-emergency situation, we had only like say 6 months or 12 months time frame project, and then you really have to be very brave to engage in the Caisse de Résilience, hoping that you will have following projects to complement the first steps of the project. So that's a bit a challenge, but anyway, you can start the Caisse de Résilience with just let's say the technical part, and the second year, if you have to convince another donor or the same donor to go for the social or the financial part. So it's not easy, but that's the way we have to work.
Thank you.
Is it okay?
Yes, very good points and very nice summary. And Alberto, even if you want to say the same points, this is fine. We'll just like to hear your perspective on the few main challenges. Over to you.
Yes, I mean, in terms of implementation of community contingency fund, Caisses-de-Resilience, I think the key aspect, as we were mentioning, are 2. The first one is the identification of the right target association. As we were mentioning, this part is very important. The most important part of the approach is the participatory process, which allows them as well to have to provide the kind of sustainability, because if the people themselves, the association themselves, they take the decision, it's much easier than the results are sustainable. So the identification, all this process, I think, is the main challenge in the implementation of the project, which has as well the problem of having a longer-term project, a longer-term activities with this association. At least for Central America, it's a big challenge because there are not a lot of resources, not a lot of donors, and so that's the main challenge, at least for Central America. In terms of challenge, I mean, what I think it should be done, at least for Central America, is to keep on evaluating and following up the result of the project we have already in place, because I think the evaluation we had, it's not enough. We should go on following up and evaluate, and then use all these results to design a better approach, and above all, to scale up. That's the third challenge that I think we should take in mind, and the way how to scale up this approach in terms of linking this approach with national institution, with bank institution, and to have somehow the political approval and validation of the methodology.
Alberto, thank you. I think you mentioned these last 2 points, which is actually challenges for all of us, and I'd just like to repeat these two. One is the need to evaluate the cost benefits, the results achieved through this Caisses-de-Resilience over time, and making sure that we feed back this evidence, these results, cost benefit analysis, into the next intervention for going at scale, further justifying the need for such an approach. That is very much needed. And then the linking to the national strategies and institutional credit or banking system is very important. And there we have the example in Central African Republic, where the government is announcing that he wants to have the Caisses-de-Resilience to be its official strategy for resilience in kick-starting again the rehabilitation of the agriculture sector. So with this, I would like to thank you all, everybody, especially our guest speakers, but our patient participants, because we are running 20 minutes over the time that was scheduled. We will follow up these, as we said, this is registered, the presentation will be available, there will be written answer to the questions raised. If you're not registered with the info mailing list, please send us a message to the resilience at FAO.org mailbox, and we will make sure we will follow up on your point. And we would like to announce our next webinar, because this is a series of one webinar per month up to the end of December. And the next one is the shock responsive social protection for resilience, supporting livelihoods in protracted crisis and fragile and humanitarian context, which is also why that's going to linking nicely with this Caisses-de-Resilience and the link to social protection. It's going to take place on the Tuesday 2nd of August, so please pencil this into your agenda. And also, in order to improve on our work and on this webinar, we would really, really like to receive your feedback. Feedback is so important for the way we perform and the way we share information. And there's a link that is given in the chat box, and you can click on that link and let us know right away your thought, your recommendation, your suggestion. Again, thank you to everybody, and wishing you a good rest of the day, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.